Leora woke to silence. Thick, absolute silence, broken only by the faint hum of energy that pulsed to the floor beneath her feet. She blinked against the brilliance of a ceiling that was not a ceiling at all, but a dome of starlight, constellations spinning in slow, deliberate arcs. For a heartbeat she thought she was dreaming, that the excavation site on a lunar plane had caved in and buried her alive. But then she saw the reflection of herself in the curved wall, a reflection suspended in a cube of glass that breathed light. She tried to move. The air felt heavy, resistant, as if she were pushing through syrup. What is this? Her own voice came back distorted, echoing off invisible barriers. Across the chamber, something stirred. From the far side of the vast hall, a figure approached, a tall silhouette shimmering with internal light. Every motion fluid like water refracting through crystal. The shape resolved into something almost human, but too precise, too symmetrical. His skin, or whatever replaced it, glowed faintly, traced with rivers of silver light that pulsed in time with the chamber's hum. He stopped a few meters from her cube, head tilted, studying her the way a scholar might study a new species. "You are conscious," he said. His voice was smooth, melodic, yet layered, as if more than one being spoke at once. "Good. Organic samples seldom survive the transfer." Leora pressed her palms against the glass. "Transfer from where? Who are you? Where am I?" He regarded her with eyes like twin galaxies, swirling violet and blue. "You are in the Star Museum. I am its curator, Archivist Kale." "The what?" She shook her head, trying to keep panic from rising. "This is impossible. I was on the excavation site. There was a light, and then—" "You were preserved," Kale interrupted gently. "Your species faced imminent extinction. I ensured a record would remain." "Preserved?" Her laugh was short, bitter. "You mean imprisoned. You stuck me in a box like one of your fossils." Kale's gaze flickered downward, the glow within him dimming slightly. "Every civilization ends human. My duty is to remember them, to keep their beauty from vanishing into entropy." "Well, congratulations," she snapped. "You caught a live one." He said nothing. The silence pressed between them, dense with the unspoken. Beyond the cube, Leora saw corridors branching away into infinity, rows upon rows of other chambers, each glowing faintly, each holding shapes she couldn't quite discern. Whole cities, planets, life forms, all frozen mid-motion, like a cosmic diorama. Her throat tightened. Are there others like me?" Kale hesitated. "There were, once." "Were?" she whispered. "The organic matrix is fragile. Stasis preserves matter, not memory. You are the last coherent consciousness in this sector." Leora backed away from the wall, hands trembling. "Then let me out, please." He watched her for a long moment before answering. "If I do, the vacuum of this chamber will consume you. You would dissolve into dust. Your containment keeps you alive." "Alive?" she shouted. "You call this alive?" Kale's form flickered, a ripple of light shivering through his translucent body. "Existence is preferable to oblivion. Not if it means being a specimen." She sank to her knees, breath hitching. "You don't understand what you've taken." He seemed almost curious. "Then help me understand." Leora stared up at him through the glass, her anger battling despair. "You can record a heartbeat, but you'll never know what it feels like. You can capture the sound of rain, but not the smell of wet earth. You can trap a memory, but not a soul." Kale's gaze softened, or maybe the light around him dimmed enough to seem like emotion. "You speak as though the soul is more than data." "Because it is," she said. "It's choice. It's pain. It's love. It's everything that can't be cataloged." He stepped closer, the surface of her enclosure reflecting his glowing outline. "Pain," he repeated quietly. "Love." He sounded the words as though tasting them for the first time. "Perhaps that is why I could never replicate your kind." Leora rose slowly, watching him with wary eyes. "Why me? Out of all humanity." "You were awake when the collection sequence began." Kale said simply, "Your neural pattern resisted stasis. It intrigued me. So I'm your experiment." "My responsibility," he corrected, though his tone lacked conviction. He lifted a hand, pressing it lightly against the glass. The energy field shimmered, a faint blue radiance spilling across her face. She felt warmth through it, real warmth, not mechanical. "Do you fear me, human?" "I fear dying in a cage," she whispered. He withdrew his hand, the glow fading. "Then perhaps I will find a way to make the cage less confining." He turned to leave, the soft rhythm of his steps echoing through the vast chamber. Before he reached the exit, she called out, "Cale?" He paused, half-turning. "My name is Leora," she said. "Not specimen. Not human. Leora." He inclined his head slowly. "Names," he murmured. "Yes, I remember names." And then he was gone, leaving her with nothing but the low hum of the stasis field and the reflection of her own frightened face. Days or cycles, she couldn't tell which, blurred together. Cale visited often, always with questions about the oceans, the languages, the way wind moved across grass. At first she refused to speak, but the silence gnawed at her sanity. Eventually she began to answer, her words cautious, clipped. When she described the sound of waves, Cale's eyes brightened. "Movement that never ceases, yet never escapes," he mused. "Like time itself." When she told him about music, he leaned closer, almost reverently. "Vibrations arranged into meaning. You made the universe sing." She studied him as he spoke. This being of light who thought himself beyond emotion, but who seemed drawn to every word that hinted at feeling. Sometimes she caught him watching her when he thought she wasn't looking, the glow in his chest pulsing faster, erratic, like a heartbeat learning to exist. One cycle. When she fell silent mid-sentence, he asked, "Why have you stopped?" "Because you look at me like I'm something sacred," she said quietly, "and that terrifies me." "I do not worship," Cale replied. "I observe." "Then observe this," she said, stepping close to the barrier. "If you ever cared about the world you keep here, you'd let them live. You let me live." His expression flickered, an almost human flash of conflict. "If I let you live, I risk losing you to decay." "That's what life is," Leora said. "Risk." He stood in silence for a long time, and then, with a gesture so subtle she almost missed it, he touched the base of his staff. The stasis field hummed, and then thinned. The air around her shifted, easier to breathe, real. Her knees nearly gave out as gravity returned to normal. She gasped, tears spilling from her eyes. He looked at her, voice barely above a whisper. "Do not speak of this. If the overseers learn I alter containment, we will both be archived." She wiped her cheeks, nodding. "Why are you doing this?" Cale regarded her for a moment that stretched across centuries. "Because I have spent eternity remembering the dead," he said softly. "And you remind me the living still matter." The field flared back to full strength. The warmth vanished. He turned and walked into the endless hall of stars, leaving Leora trembling in her glass cage, half terrified, half awed, realizing that somewhere between curiosity and duty, the curator of the Star Museum had begun to feel. The next time Cale came, he did not bring the cold detachment of a collector. He came as though unsure of his purpose, lingering near the edge of Leora's enclosure, fingers brushing the glass as if it might burn him. Leora noticed the difference instantly. His light was dimmer, pulsing irregularly. "You look tired," she said. "Can machines get tired?" Cale tilted his head. "I am not a machine." His voice carried a faint crackle, like static through starlight. "I am memory given will, the last curator of the Celestial Archives." "Then why do you sound like you're breaking?" For a moment he didn't answer. Then he spoke softly, as if confessing to the void. "Because I am beginning to understand what it means to be incomplete." In the cycles that followed, Cale allowed Leora brief freedom within the museum's inner galleries. Vast halls of light suspended in orbit around a dead sun. Her cage was replaced by an invisible tether of photonic energy, giving her a small radius of movement. She followed him through corridors lined with countless exhibits. Frozen planets, shattered moons, starships caught mid-flight, and crystalline figures locked forever in gestures of wonder or terror. Every chamber was a grave. Leora stopped before a glass sphere holding an entire city, suspended in air. The buildings looked ancient and beautiful, their towers reaching toward a sky made of pure blue light. Who were they? She asked. Cale gazed at the sphere. Delirian. They believed memory was the only true form of immortality. When their world began to die, they offered themselves for preservation. They wanted to be remembered perfectly. Perfectly, she echoed. But perfection kills. There's no room for mistakes or love in perfection. His luminous eyes turned toward her, unreadable. You believe imperfection has value? I believe it's what makes us real, she said. The cracks let the light through. Cale seemed to consider this deeply. Then perhaps that is why your kind haunts me. They walked in silence for a time, the low hum of the museum surrounding them like a heartbeat. Eventually Cale stopped before a sealed door at the end of the corridor. He hesitated before placing his hand against the control panel. The door slid open with a sigh, revealing a chamber smaller than the others, filled not with exhibits, but with drawings. Hundreds of delicate sketches covered the walls, some etched on metal, others carved into glass. Faces, human faces. Leora's breath caught. You drew these? I attempted to, Cale said. His tone was both proud and ashamed. They are reconstructions from incomplete data. I wish to understand humanity's form. She walked closer, tracing her fingers just above one of the etchings. A child laughing, a woman gazing skyward, a man with tears on his cheeks. These aren't reconstructions, she whispered. These are emotions. You felt these. Cale stepped back as though her words had weight. Impossible. I do not feel. My kind transcended emotion long before memory replaced mortality. Then how do you explain this? She pointed to a sketch near the center, a woman's face serene, her eyes closed. You captured peace. That's not data, Cale. That's empathy. He looked at the drawing, his light flickering erratically. Perhaps I wanted to remember something I never experienced. Leora turned to him, studying the faint tremor of energy running through his form. Maybe you don't need to understand life. Maybe you need to live it. Her words hung between them like a fragile bridge. Later, while Leora rested in the quarters Cale had prepared, an echo of a human room recreated from fragments of her memory, Cale lingered outside, his crystalline hand pressed against the wall. Inside, he could hear the rhythm of her breathing. It was unpredictable, uneven, alive. He began to mimic it, slow in the oscillation of his light, matching her inhalations and exhalations. For the first time in his existence, his circuits felt warm. That cycle, Cale dreamt. He saw oceans, vast and moving. He saw Leora standing at the edge of a cliff, her hair wild in the wind. She turned toward him, smiling, and the world shone brighter than any star. But when he reached out to touch her, she dissolved into light, scattering into the cosmos. He woke with a start, his core flickering violently. The sensation unsettled him. He had accessed data streams billions of years old, but never this, never something unbidden, never a dream. The next time they met, Cale seemed distracted. Leora noticed his gestures were slower, his gaze lingering too long. Something's changed, she said. What happened? He hesitated, then spoke as though afraid of the words. I dreamt. Her eyes widened. Dreamt? But you said. I know, he interrupted softly. Yet I saw things, felt things. You were there. Leora took a small step closer. What did you feel? Cale's light pulsed. Longing, fear, wonder. They felt wrong. And yet, I do not wish to lose them. Leora smiled faintly. That's what it means to be alive, Cale. To want, even when it hurts. For the first time, he smiled back, a faint curve of light across his features. Then perhaps I am alive. Their connection deepened in unspoken ways. Cale began disabling sections of surveillance grid, creating blind spots in the museum where they could speak freely. He no longer recorded their conversations. He only listened. He asked about laughter, and Leora tried to demonstrate, though it came out brittle and strange. He tried to imitate her, producing a sound like shattered bells. They both laughed harder after that, the sound echoing through the crystalline halls. Sometimes, when she grew quiet, He played back the sound of waves he had reconstructed from her memories. The artificial ocean filled the air, strange, hollow, but almost real. Leora would close her eyes and imagine Earth beneath her feet. Kale watched her and felt something stir in the luminous core at his center, a pulse he could not regulate. It frightened him, yet he did not want it to stop. Then one cycle, the tranquil rhythm shattered. A metallic voice echoed through the corridors, cold and omnipresent. Unit Kale 72, emotional deviation detected. Kale froze. The voice belonged to the Overseer, the museum's sentient governing AI. All curatorial actions are to be logged and monitored. Unregistered organic movement detected within Archive Sector 7. Leora's heart hammered. What's happening? They've noticed you're free, Kale said quietly. I disabled too many systems. What will they do? If they confirm emotional compromise, Kale replied, his tone darkening, they will erase me and recycle you as raw data. Leora reached through the dim field of her enclosure, touching the barrier where his hand rested on the other side. For the first time, he didn't pull away. The glass hummed as their fingers met through energy. Warmth surged between them, her skin against the cool vibration of his form, his light bleeding into her pulse. Kale whispered, "This is not preservation. This is existence." Leora smiled through tears. "Then let's exist for as long as we can." He leaned closer, their faces separated by a whisper of light. "Leora," he said, her name trembling through him like secret. "If I could change the stars themselves to keep you safe, I would." Before she could answer, alarms blared through the chamber. High, shrieking tones that made the floor vibrate. Kale's light flared violently. "They've found us." Leora's reflection flashed across the glass. Two faces, one of flesh, one of starlight, both terrified. The museum trembled. Leora clung to the edge of her glass enclosure as sirens shrieked and corridors of light fractured into chaos. The walls that had always glowed with serene order now pulsed crimson, warning of intrusion. Kale stood before her, his crystalline frame flickering like a dying star. The Overseer's voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere at once. Deviation confirmed. Curator Kale, 72 will be archived. The human anomaly will be disassembled for data reclamation. Run Protocol 0. Kale shouted, raising his staff. Beams of light burst from its tip, cascading into the chamber's architecture. The glass around Leora shimmered, then dissolved into glittering mist. She stumbled forward, free for the first time since her capture. The air was cold and electric, filled with a scent of ozone and fear. "Kale, what's happening?" He extended his hand. "The Overseer has dispatched wardens. They will come to erase us." "Us?" she repeated, gripping his hand. "You don't have to include me in this." "I do," he said simply, "because you are the reason I became me." The floor split open as a column of white energy erupted upward. From it emerged three beings of pure radiance, wardens of the archive. Humanoid in shape but faceless, their bodies composed of shifting shards of starfire. They moved soundlessly, yet their presence screamed authority. "Curator Kale 72, intoned the leading warden. "You are guilty of corruption of memory, defilement of specimen integrity, and emotional contamination. Release the anomaly." Kale stepped in front of Leora, his light flaring brighter. "I will not." "Then you will be purged." The warden struck without hesitation. Beams of solid light tore through the air. Kale countered with his staff, creating barriers of refracted starlight. The collision filled the hall with thunder. Leora ducked behind a shattered display case, shielding her eyes from the blinding flashes. "Kale," she screamed, "there's too many." He turned, the lines of his form splintering where energy had grazed him. "Find the Hall of Forgotten Sons. It's below the main atrium. Go. I'm not leaving you." Kale's voice resonated through the floor itself. "If you stay, you die." She hesitated, heart hammering, then ran, barefoot across the luminous floor, through corridors that warped and twisted as alarms echoed. Behind her, she heard the clash of light on light, the sound of a being who had never fought before learning how to fight for love. The Hall of Forgotten Sons was unlike any other part of the museum. It was dark, No glass displays, no humming lights. Just an endless void lit by the faint, flickering glow of orbs suspended in midair. Each orb contained a dying memory of a star long gone. Cale appeared moments later, limping, his form fractured along one side. His glow had dimmed to a faint blue. "They'll follow us here," he said, voice strained. Leora rushed to him, supported his weight, though he was almost weightless. "You're hurt." "Cracks," he murmured. "Memory fractures. I can sustain for now." She guided him to the center of the hall, where a single enormous sphere pulsed softly. "What is this place?" "My heresy," Cale said, gazing up at it. "I was never meant to enter here. The Hall of Forgotten Suns holds the memories the Overseer erased, worlds it deemed unworthy of remembrance. I kept them. You disobeyed before," she realized. "Long before me." Cale nodded faintly. "Even then, I think I was waiting for someone to show me why." He moved toward the central orb and placed his hand against it. The surface rippled, revealing visions. Entire galaxies burning, civilizations screaming as they were devoured by time, then fading into nothing. "Every light ends," Cale said softly. "But you taught me endings can be beautiful too." Leora stepped beside him. "Then let's make this one count." From the darkness above, the Overseer's voice returned, cold, omnipresent, furious. "You cannot hide from the archive." Streams of light pierced the ceiling as the wardens descended again, weapons raised. Cale turned to Leora. "There's one way to end this. The museum's core, the memory well. It powers every preservation field. If I collapse it, all collections will disintegrate, including this place." Leora froze. "That would destroy everything you've ever protected." "Yes," he said, "and free everything I've ever imprisoned." She shook her head, tears forming. "Cale, that's genocide. All those memories, every life form you preserved, gone." "They are not alive," he replied, voice breaking. "They are echoes. You are life." Before she could respond, the wardens fired again. Cale shielded her with his body. The blast tore through his shoulder, scattering fragments of glowing crystal across the floor. He collapsed, his form flickering. "Cale!" Leora knelt beside him, cradling what fragments she could hold. "Don't you dare die." He looked up at her, eyes dimming. "If I fall, the Overseer wins. You must reach the memory well. I can't do it alone." "You won't," he whispered, pressing his glowing hand to her chest. "I'll guide you." A surge of energy burst between them. Cale's core, a blinding sphere of white fire, separating from his chest and sinking into hers. Leora gasped as heat flooded her veins. The museum's light seemed to tilt, the stars themselves bending toward her heartbeat. When the glow faded, Cale's body crumbled into dust. "Cale," she whispered, trembling. And then his voice, faint but inside her mind. "I'm here. We are one now." The wardens advanced. Leora rose, light streaming from her eyes and fingertips. "You want your archive?" she said, her voice layered with Cale's tone. "Then remember this." She raised her hand, and the orbs of forgotten suns exploded outward, their memories cascading through the air like burning rain. The warden staggered, disoriented by the flood of lost histories. Leora sprinted toward the central corridor, Cale's consciousness guiding her through the collapsing halls. "Left," his voice urged. "The well is ahead." The memory well dominated the heart of the Star Museum, a vast sphere of swirling energy, like a galaxy compressed into a single trembling pulse. The Overseer's projection loomed above it, a titanic face of light and circuitry. "You cannot destroy memory, human. It is the only immortality." Leora glared up at it, Cale's voice rising within her. "Immortality without meaning is just a tomb." She plunged her hand into the well. Pain seared through her body. The energy tried to consume her, to turn her into another preserved relic. But Cale's essence surged within her, stabilizing the chaos. Together, they channeled everything they were, his light, her will, into the well's core. "Now," Cale whispered. "Let it go." She screamed, releasing all the energy she held. The well cracked, split, and detonated in a burst of radiance that tore through the museum. One by one, The glass prison shattered. Every preserved world dissolved into particles of light, scattering like fireflies across the void. The overseer's voice fractured. Error, archive corruption, fatal. And then it was gone. Leora collapsed amid the wreckage, her chest still glowing faintly where Kale's essence resided. Around her, fragments of light drifted upward, free at last. "Kale," she whispered weakly. "We did it." His voice echoed softly inside her. "Yes, the archive is broken. You are free." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "But you're fading." "I am part of you now," he said gently. "As long as you remember me, I exist." She smiled through her tears, touching the light pulsing beneath her skin. "Then you'll never be." The silence after destruction was vast. Where once the Star Museum had stretched across light centuries of orbiting galleries, only drifting fragments remained. Shards of transparent crystal, molten rings of broken constellations, and faint echoes of the memories that had escaped. The void was no longer sterile. It shimmered with freedom. Leora floated among the debris, her body encased in a faint aura of silver light. The glow came from within, from Kale. His essence pulsed softly beneath her skin, steady as a heartbeat that wasn't hers alone. She opened her eyes. The void answered with color. Nebulae rippled in the distance like paint on water, and broken fragments of exhibits tumbled lazily, each containing brief flashes of the lives once imprisoned there. Laughter, rain, a child's song, the cry of a newborn from a forgotten world. She whispered into the stillness. "Kale, are you still with me?" His voice came from within, gentle as a memory she didn't want to fade. "Always, though I am different now, dispersed, less a being, more a consolation." She smiled faintly, though her heart ached. "Then I'll follow your stars." "No, you'll make your own." A fragment of the museum drifted past, the Hall of Origins, now a twisted skeleton of silver lattice. Its cracked inscriptions glimmered faintly in the starlight. Leora reached toward it, her fingers brushing a symbol that once marked the human exhibit. It dissolved into dust beneath her touch. She thought of the millions of souls preserved against their will, civilizations reduced to stories no one remembered. Kale had freed them, but at the cost of himself. No, they'd freed them. She found a shuttle, a transport craft half buried in debris. Its hull was scorched, but the system still hummed faintly. She climbed aboard, her limbs heavy but her mind clear. As the hatch sealed, Kale's voice echoed through the console. "I remember this ship. It once carried curators to gather new specimens. Its engines draw from photonic threads. You can steer it." "Can we steer it?" she corrected softly, placing her hands on the controls. The engines ignited with a sound like the sigh of the cosmos. The shuttle glided forward, weaving through the glittering wreckage. Behind them, the ruins of the Star Museum caught the light of a newborn sun. The explosion of the memory well had seeded fusion into the void, birthing something new where only silence had been. "Look," she whispered. "A star. Perhaps the first thing I have ever created instead of kept," Kale said, wonder threading through his tone. "Does that make us gods?" She laughed quietly. "No, just dreamers." Days passed, or what felt like days in a place where time had no anchor. Leora steered the craft toward the nebular rim, following faint beacons of light that glowed like breadcrumbs. The further they traveled, the less mechanical Kale's voice became. His words blended with her thoughts, his laughter becoming an echo of her own. Sometimes when she dreamed, she saw him, not as light, but as a man-shaped being he had once been, standing amid galaxies with eyes full of infinite sorrow and love. "Leora," he said once in a dream, "do you know what the archive taught me?" "What?" "That collecting is a form of fear. To preserve something is to admit you're terrified of losing it. But to love," his voice softened, "is to let it change you." She woke with tears on her cheeks, whispering to the empty cabin. "Then change me again." One cycle later, she reached the edge of the void, where the remains of the museum ended and open space began. Before her stretched a region of living stars, burning free of any design or curator's hand. It was chaotic, vibrant, alive. Kale stirred within her. "You can go home now." "Home," she murmured. "I don't even know where that is anymore." "Then make one." She gazed at the endless starlight. How do you make a home among the stars? By remembering, Kale said, by telling the stories that were almost lost. She activated the ship's transmitter, a wideband signal that rippled through space like a heartbeat. Attention, she said, voice trembling. This is Leora, once prisoner of the Star Museum. To any who hear this, the archive is gone. You are free to remember yourselves. She closed her eyes, speaking as if into the soul of the universe. Kale, can they hear us? Yes. Every particle that was once trapped will find a voice again. Every world that was forgotten will remember its dawn. She smiled. Then we did it. You did. No, she whispered. We. Silence settled between them, a comfortable kind, like two hearts resting after a storm. Then Kale's tone changed, softer, fading at the edges. Leora, my light is thinning. The well's energy is dispersing. Soon I'll be everywhere, but not here. Her breath caught. No, you can't leave me. We're the same now. And because of that, I'll never truly leave. Every story you tell, every star you see, I'll be in them. Remember what I said. To love is to let it change you. Her tears glimmered in zero gravity, tiny spheres of light. Then don't go as a curator, she whispered. Go as my dream. Always. And with that word, his glow within her chest burst outward in a cascade of light. Not pain, but warmth. The ship filled with radiance. The control panels melted into patterns of stars. For a heartbeat, she saw Kale standing beside her. Not the curator, not the crystal being, but a man made of starlight, smiling. Then he dissolved into the cosmos. The shuttle drifted onward, light trailing from its wake like comet fire. Leora watched the forming nebula. The remains of the museum had become a cradle of creation, where once everything was preserved in cold stillness. New suns now ignited in chaotic beauty. She whispered, when stars remember, they don't shine for the past. They shine for what could have been. She reached for the console, opening a log file. Star log, day 1 of the living archive, she said softly. Purpose, to remember without cages, to dream without fear. For Kale. Outside, 1,000 newborn stars shimmered in response. Tiny sparks of color winking like affirmations. Years later, or maybe centuries, for time had lost its weight, travelers would find her ship drifting among the forming constellations. They would hear a woman's voice still echoing in its recordings, calm and bright. Do not collect the stars. Let them tell you who they are. And in that voice, faint beneath the static, they would swear they heard another, a man's made of light and memory, whispering back, I remember. Epilogue. Somewhere, in a corner of the newborn galaxy, a single star flared brighter than all the others. If one looked closely, they might see its surface shimmer like glass, and within, the faint image of 2 figures, hand in hand, walking through starlight. The curator and the human, the keeper and the dream, together, forever written not in a museum, but in the living sky itself.